God changes the plans of man. He just does. My will is not always his will, and his will should always be mine. And when I get off track, I find, maybe not in the moment, but later, he's finding a way to get me back on track. I can see him in many areas of my life where I wasn't really paying attention, thinking that it was God, but it really was God. So I can look back now and go, oh, wow, that was really him. That happened because of this and this and this. He really is the author of my faith.
Welcome, everybody, to the Stories of John Wesley podcast. And today we are joined by Kristin McLaughlin. Is that how you say your last name, possibly?
Some people say McLaughlin, some people say McLaughlin.
McLaughlin, yeah.
They're not wrong either way.
Well, thank you for being here and sharing your time with us today. You are a member here of John Wesley, and I want to get to that. I want to hear that. I think that would be encouraging for people to get to know you a little bit. And so thanks for being here and sharing your time with us.
Sure.
Let's start at the beginning. How did your faith journey start? I've been talking to a lot of people who grew up in the church, and they just kind of have this, they always believed that God existed and the gospel was real. Mm-hmm. And then, like, literally the last episode just a few minutes ago with Todd, he was sharing that he was way away from the Lord until later in his life. So for you, how did your journey start?
Well, I did. I grew up, in the church. I remember my grandpa was a singer, and so he would sing on Sunday mornings, and I would get to go spend the weekend with my grandparents when I was very young, and then my parents would meet us on Sunday morning at the same church, and then we would have a family dinner. It's just always been there. However, growing up, you find other worldly things out there, and
Sure.
I grew up in one Protestant faith and found that all my friends were Baptist.
Oh.
So I would go to Baptist Sunday school and Baptist church camps and Baptist everything, but then I'd have to walk a couple blocks to go to the Methodist church that I grew up in.
Was that here locally or
No,
somewhere
that was
else?
in Georgetown, Texas, which is 30 miles north of Austin.
Yeah.
And I have lifelong friends from that experience, but I grew in faith there because at that time, I felt kind of boxed in, and you had to think one way. And then I found out that my Baptist friends thought a little bit more outside the box, and there was more non-conservative ways to worship. And I found that was really cool for me.
So you kind of saw it from both worlds.
Oh, yeah.
Your parents being involved in the Methodist church, but your friends being in the Baptist world.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I went away to college and kind of got involved a little bit, but not a lot. I got involved in sororities and, very social activities, and actually got invited to go to a non-denominational, more Pentecostal church. So I visited a little bit there and saw in a completely different aspect on, the boxes that denominations can put us in.
What did you think back then about the categories like that? Did you find there was maybe like purpose in that, or did you feel like what was?
I thought it was divisive.
Okay.
To be quite honest with
Sure.
you.
Yeah.
And it was almost like these people go here and these people go there, and you can't talk to these people, and this is, and I did not like that. I was the firstborn, and I kind of, I guess, was a guinea pig rebel in my family and wanted to answer my own questions. I believed that there was more.
Yeah.
And found out that there was.
Growing up in the church, there oftentimes can be like, okay, well, I'm just doing I'm doing what my parents are doing. They're taking me to church, they're Sunday school, all this kind of stuff. Was there ever a moment where you were just like, I need to own this a little bit, and your own faith started to develop? Was there a particular point in your life where that started to happen?
High school.
Okay.
That's when I kind of started going to the Baptist Sunday school because I wanted it to be mine, not theirs. That was the starting point, really, in my journey to figure out my faith and my story. And no regrets for that. I think it was the best thing I could have done, is to figure out my story.
Yeah, to ask the questions in order to get to figure it out. Tell us a little bit about your family, and tell us about, you were saying your husband's name is Tom.
Yep.
Tell us about the dynamic or the timeline from you being in college to to meet? Where did you meet Tom?
I met him in the Methodist Church
Okay.
when we were 12. He's from Austin,
Okay.
which is 30 miles, south of Georgetown. And his best friend from growing up moved to Georgetown from Austin. And so Tom would come up to Georgetown to visit his friend and stay for the weekend. So I was in a Methodist Sunday school class where I met a Catholic boy. And I really did fall in love that day.
Wow.
Even though we dated other people, whatever, he was always.
That had a particular, it stood out to you.
I can tell you what I was wearing the day I met him.
Wow.
That's really weird.
That's crazy.
But, I just kind of knew something was special about us.
And how long after that point did you guys eventually date? And all that
We
kind of
dated
stuff?
a little bit the summer I graduated from high school, and then I went away to college. And out of the blue, he calls me one day and says, "Are you coming home for the holidays?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to go out?" And I went, "Yeah."
Okay.
And then that was, I guess, my freshman year, sophomore year in college.
Okay.
And I was going to go to I went to Tyler Junior College, which is a 2-year school, and I was going to go to Nacogdoches for the rest of my college, and ended up going back to San Marcos because it was closer to him to see if we could really make something work. And
Yeah.
we did. And, it was very interesting because here's a Catholic girl
Right.
that's going to be marrying a Catholic boy and a Methodist girl.
Yes.
So we actually went to both the Catholic and the Methodist engagement encounters and met with both minister and the priest,
Okay.
and actually had both of them give the rites of marriage in my church, my home church,
Okay.
which is kind of unusual.
Yeah, and then ultimately, not to fast forward anything, but ultimately, you guys are members of John Wesley. Give us. I have a few things I want to ask, but what eventually led y'all to this area and to this church? So you're effectively back in the
Yeah.
church that
Yeah.
the type of church that you grew up, your parents and grandparents were in. But what led y'all here?
Well, when we got married, we decided we weren't going to be either, so we became non-denominational.
Okay.
And got invited to a church that some people that he knew were going to, and got really super involved there. And I think he was so used to tradition and reverence, whereas in the non-denominational church, it's really not like that. For me, I loved it because of the worship. I'm a musician, so I was always
I didn't
singing
know
or
that.
teaching. Or
What do you play or sing or?
I sang,
Sing. Okay.
and then I played percussion in high school band, but I didn't do that, in the church, just sang. And I taught the kids choir for a while.
Very cool.
But it was good for me, but it wasn't good for him. And it was good for the kids, but it wasn't good for him. So he kind of decided he wanted to find something different. So we searched around for a while, and we moved to this area, and we're driving a very long way to go to a church. And finally we said, we just need to find something in our community, in our home area. And so this one was when we had always kind of driven by, and my husband goes, "Let's go there."
That's awesome.
And I said, it's a denomination. Are you okay with that? He goes, "Yes, I am." And we came one Sunday, and we've never left.
How long have y'all been here at the church now?
2.5 years.
Okay.
So we're newbies
Yeah.
compared to everybody else that we know here.
Well, I was just
40
talking to the
years.
pastors, and they've only been here since 2015, so not crazy long. But you love to sing, I'm sure. What kind of impact has music had on your growth as a Christian, as a believer, and just how would you describe that?
Huge. It's a great way to memorize scripture.
Oh, that's cool.
My favorite band right now is Sons of Korah, and all they do is make psalms into songs.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's a great way for me to memorize scripture. It's a way for me to worship. I love the old hymns, but I really got involved in the choral music that was scriptural, and that meant a lot to me because I was worshiping. To me, the worship leaders or the singers are leading us into, warfare.
Right.
And I feel very strongly that good music is a necessity in worship. So
I like that. Before the COVID stuff, which service were you guys going to, the modern or the
well,
contemporary?
we were going to the modern. Well, we started out going to the early service. You know, we like to have our Sunday to enjoy and relax, and so we would go to the early service and then go to Sunday school. Well, then in
Yeah.
January they changed all of the times to
Yes.
where I
Yes.
have to decide between Sunday school and
Yes, I'm sure
second
that was an
service.
adjustment.
So
Yeah.
it's been a little adjustment there, and our old Sunday school class is now Zooming
Oh,
at
yeah.
a different time, but
That's a little different, huh?
it is different, and I think it's probably harder to connect. And plus, we're newbies to this church, and the people in our Sunday school class have been their own class for 35 years.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe it's easier for them to connect, but it's a
Yeah.
little bit harder.
Yeah. The verse that I was mentioning earlier was that Psalms, not Psalms, but the Jeremiah 29:11 passage, where it talks about how essentially God has a plan for all of us. And oftentimes I think our idea of what our life might look like doesn't always end up with the way that God wants it to look like. And so sometimes there can be some conflict there. Looking back at your life, how do you see that in regards to maybe how you feel like what was God's plan for your life, and then what your own life, maybe your own plans for your own life, or was there any conflict there, or like how do you think about that?
Well, God changes the plans of man. He just does. My will is not always his will, and his will should always be mine. And when I get off track, I find, maybe not in the moment, but later, he's finding a way to get me back on track. I can see him in many areas of my life where I wasn't really paying attention, thinking that it was God, but it really was God. So I can look back now and go, oh, wow, that was really him. That happened because of this and this and this. He really is the author of my faith, truly.
Yeah.
He's written my name down and what he wants, the will for my life. I'm the one that kind of gets outside of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I see him creating where I'm at today
Yeah.
based on decisions that I've made, but he knew I would be here.
One of the things I've been talking with people about is how, like, if you look back at your life, you can really see God's hand, but a lot of times you often don't see immediately, or even relatively soon after something happens or whatever, transition or whatever. You don't really see that until you have proper perspective. In a little bit of years, like I'm 37 now, and I can look back and say, oh, when stuff happened in my 20s or whatever, like I can now look back on that with some perspective. Do you feel like that is the same for you? Like maybe you didn't know in the moment of certain aspects or certain points of your life, but looking back with that proper perspective, you can see his hand and guiding you and moving you. And does that resonate with how
Absolutely.
you see things?
I mean, I can look back and see exact instances that at that time I didn't know was God, that I can absolutely 100% tell you right now that it was God. I can also tell you that I've had opportunity to find out very shortly thereafter a moment that happened that it really was God, because I got confirmation from somebody else. Because I listened to the Spirit prompting me to say something or be something, or to hug somebody or whatever, doesn't matter, that I became what they were praying for. And I didn't even know that at the moment. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it does. Stories often have conflicts along the way. I don't know if conflict's the right word, but is there anything that you can look back as a real difficult season? Maybe there was sickness, maybe there was was there anything in your life that you could share that it was hard to walk through at the time, but at the same time you knew how much God loved you through that? Is there anything like that in your life where you feel comfortable sharing? Or
Versus me, it was more of a family walk. We ended up becoming guardians for a young girl when my husband was a vice principal at a school in Arizona. And I could go into, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
September
go ahead.
11th happened.
Okay.
And now I can say beauty comes from ashes because of this. September 11th happened. My husband was going to college to become a teacher. I was singing with a small group in my church. One of the guys that was singing in the small group got called back into active duty because of September 11th. One of the other ladies that I sang with was the vice principal at a charter school. She knew my husband was going to school to be a teacher. She helped him get fast-tracked to become the teacher in her school. So he was replacing the guy that was getting called back into active duty.
Yes, okay.
First day of the classroom, he comes in and introduces himself and says, "Hi, I'm Mr. McLaughlin. Live in Mesa, Arizona, but I'm from Austin, Texas." This little girl in the back in the classroom goes, "I'm from Austin, Texas." Well, about a year and a half later, she became our daughter.
Wow. Okay.
So didn't know the baggage that was going to come with all of that, bringing an 11-year-old girl to a household of just boys.
Yeah. Tell us about your family. Boys
3 sons,
Okay.
your age on down, and then our adopted daughter who's 30.
Wow.
She's 30 now.
Okay, take us through a little bit more of that story. I think that would be great to hear.
It's the coolest thing because my husband wanted to help this little girl. She was one of 4 children whose grandmother had adopted her grandchildren. Her parents had been legally severed, so the grandmother adopted them. She passes away. Basically, nobody wants the kids.
Wow.
The state wouldn't separate them into the foster care system. They wanted you to have all of them or none of them. Well, all 4 of the teachers for the children said that they would help. So
4 teachers adopted each one of the kids? That is interesting. Wow.
that never happened in the state of Arizona, to separate them all like that.
Yeah.
But they weren't all in the foster care system. They were teachers that wanted to help the kids.
Yeah.
Well, out of the 4, 3 of them did not stay with the people that helped. She's the only one that stuck.
Yeah, I can imagine that being difficult. I mean,
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
She comes into my home. I've never met her. She knows my husband, and takes her 6 months to call him Dad. He's
Yeah.
Mr. Mac,
right.
She just latched on
Well,
to me
you didn't
immediately.
expect that to be a part of your story.
No,
I'm
I
sure.
didn't.
Like, yeah.
But I knew that was from God. I just knew that I was doing the Prayer of Jabez Bible study at that time, and my
Okay.
husband goes, "Can we help her?" And I was, "Yeah, we'll help." He goes, "No, I want you to pray about this. This may be longer than 3 weeks. I don't know what's going to happen," but he goes, I really want you to be in agreement with me on this."
Wow.
And so I was at the part in that verse. Do you know that Bible verse?
Briefly.
Okay.
Not very.
Well, it's a part in
in-depth.
the verse where it says, "Enlarge your territory, enlarge my territories."
Okay.
Well, I get a call while I'm in the middle of that, and my sister delivers her only child and has all kind of health issues. Well, I'm thinking, oh, cool, my territory is being enlarged because I just became an aunt. Well, no, it was because of this girl.
Wow.
A couple days later, after paperwork and all that stuff, she came into my home.
What's the impact been? I mean, she was 11 at the time.
was 11.
She's 30 now.
She's 30.
I mean, I know you can't boil that down into a few sentences, but what's that been like?
The hardest yet most rewarding thing that I think my husband and I both would say has happened for both of us, because we did not know the challenges bringing in for me, a stranger into my home, another female into the home, and a home where we had 3 sons. So my eldest gave up his bedroom and slept on the couch his senior year of high school so she could have a room.
Yeah.
So, I saw God in all areas. I see him now in the relationships with the boys,
Yeah.
how it's benefited our entire family. I mean, this morning she called and FaceTimed me, and she goes, "Mom, look." She goes, "I just want to see, my hair is curling like yours, and I'm wearing this shirt you gave me." She goes, "I look like my mom." And she looks nothing like me, but, the
Yeah,
fact that she
yeah.
did that with me in FaceTime, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, that was so cool.
Yeah. What is she in the area now, or what does she do
She's
now?
in the Heights.
Okay.
And she got a promotion, and she moved into her new apartment on Thursday.
Wow.
So she was videoing and showing us the apartment, and yeah.
That's really cool. I mean,
It's really
if you
cool.
think about the heart of the gospel story is like we are all adopted into God's family, like it's just at the heart of what it means to be a Christian. So with you sharing that part of your story, how did you and your husband really, because I think people struggle with knowing knowing how God is leading us, and you shared a little bit about, you're going through a study and you kind of like had some insight here and there and some confirmations and stuff. But like, how would you encourage someone that maybe is struggling with like, how do I know God is calling me to do something or calling me to take action? Or like, do you feel like it's the kind of thing where you have to be so sure to do something? Or did you just like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I just want to be obedient? Or how did you guys walk through that part of it?
Well, I think it's all of the above. Sometimes you just feel it. Sometimes you get confirmation through somebody else saying something. Sometimes you're seeking it. You have to be open to listen. And sometimes just hearing something that somebody else said could be the Spirit leading, teaching you through them.
Yeah.
So you have to be open to listen to it.
Can you share a little bit about what the impact has been with your boys? Have they shared much? I mean,
Oh, wow.
have you seen as a mom like what that impact has been like?
Yeah, and it's still impacting them today. The oldest boy
Who gave up his room?
He's talked about adopting in his family. He's got 3 children, and they've even talked about adopting.
Wow.
It was I think a cool experience for him. The middle one, he and my daughter are like 2 peas in a pod. They have the same personality. They laugh at the same jokes. It's just, she's said that she wants him to be not the godfather, but to take care of the child if
Yeah.
something happened to she and
Wow.
her fiance.
Yeah.
Which, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The youngest, I think he had the hardest time because he was going to be getting mom and dad all to himself, really. And then this girl comes in and taking away all of this time and money and fun
Right.
stuff. So he had the hardest time getting connected with her, but really has been a good, not teacher, but a good sounding board for business, if that makes sense. He's
Yeah.
business minded, and she's listens to him whenever he gives advice.
Yeah. For you and your family, or maybe just for you, but like what would you say is the heartbeat of your faith, and what do you keep coming back to as the most important aspect of how you see and believe the gospel? Is that kind of a loaded question?
Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry.
That's okay. I think regardless of which denomination you're in, you chose Jesus just like he chose you. And in that, my role and my faith leads me to try to be the best disciple I can. Doesn't matter where I'm at, whether at work, here, church, at somebody else's church, doesn't matter. I need to try to be Christ-like. I try not to get bogged down with being inside a box. I'm a part of this Methodist church, but I'm a Christ follower, and that to me is a global
Yes.
issue. Yeah, a global love.
Yeah.
I live under grace. I'm redeemed. I'm so not worthy. It's like I get a call from you, and it's like, why would they want to talk to me? You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm so not that person. But if I find myself listening and allowing that still small voice to lead me to help someone else and to be a disciple, I think that's the most important driving force for me.
Yeah. What's your favorite aspect of who Jesus was?
His love. I mean, mercy and grace. What he did, what he stood for.
Yeah, because he disrupted the religious institution
He's a
at
disruptor.
that time. And do you have a particular favorite Bible verse that you've memorized or keep coming back to?
One thing I ask of you, one thing I seek, to gaze on your beauty, Lord, to see you in your temple, Lord. That's a psalm.
Yeah.
I love the prayer of Jabez.
Is there a song about it?
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. That's cool.
And the cool thing, when I can't sleep, we're all kind of going through this worrisome time right now.
Yeah.
And I find myself in the middle of the night sometimes, and I wake up whatever, something wakes me up, and I just cannot go back to sleep. 2-3 hours. So I'll literally just play my stuff, just listen, and it helps me go back to sleep.
Wow.
Reminds me who to pray for.
Yeah.
I'm instilling His word in my soul. When I'm
Yeah.
working in my garden, which I'm doing a lot these days, I play the music.
That's cool.
It's His garden too.
I know you guys are relatively new, like couple years here, but what in those 2 years, what kind of impact or role would you say John Wesley has had on you or your family?
A huge role. We're consistent with going instead of driving 40 minutes one way to get to church.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a good thing for my husband and I to be attending together.
Yeah.
He's gotten super involved and
Has his faith over time kind of developed and matured and just
absolutely.
not that being a Catholic and anything is, I'm not looking down on that necessarily, but like, you could probably see an evolution over time, I guess.
Absolutely. We actually talked about it last week. He knows he sees God in certain areas, and he's at a time in his life where, he goes, I feel like it's okay to question. He wants me to ask. And I said, that's exactly right. And we literally just had that conversation last week.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a wonderful church.
Yeah.
And to feel as welcomed as we were walking in the door. It was really kind of cool. There's
people in your Sunday school class just
yeah,
said, come on in, join us.
We this is when we were going to the 8:15 service, and they had the coffee
That's
time
the
out
early
there.
service,
It was
too.
an early service. But in between service and Sunday school was donuts and coffee.
Yeah.
Perfect way to get people to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So we sat down and got introduced to some folks, and somebody invited us to their Sunday school class, and we said, okay. Well, somebody sitting next to me over here says, well, we want you to come to our class. And I said, well, we'll go there next week. So there was like a little competition to join our class.
Yeah.
And we ended up going to the second class and liking the second class and stayed there. They're wonderful people in this church.
Yeah.
And they are very welcoming. They want to include you. That doesn't happen at some of the other churches that we attended that were either way too large or, the music department was only the band. There was no choir.
Yeah.
And so
Do you sing in the choir?
I
Or you
don't
thought about it,
because
or-
I have thought about it.
Yeah.
My current job, I was traveling probably 60% of the time, so I wasn't here for Wednesday night rehearsals, and had really just decided that this year was going to be my year to join the choir, and not right now.
Yeah, not right now.
Not right now.
With the face mask.
I know.
The way that I like to end these podcast episodes is I just like to ask if there's one thing that you might say. I mean, podcasts are really kind of interesting things because you record something, you put it out, and someone might not even listen to this episode for months. And I ask, and I say, what if we're on, and we actually are on stage right now, but like if you were on stage on a Sunday morning and you had, the opportunity to say something encouraging to people and that go to John Wesley, like, is there anything particular, and maybe it's related to your story or maybe it's just related to where you are right now, but like, is there anything particular that way that you might encourage that person or encourage the church? Is there anything top of mind right now that, how would you end if I asked you that question?
I mean, think about it. Back in the times of Jesus, I mean, he was ridiculed, he was persecuted. Why should we think that that's not going to happen to us just because we become Christian? And you might be going through troublesome times, but he's always there. And we're the ones that shut him out. He doesn't shut us out.
Do you think sometimes we expect that life will be smoother than it is?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't even know where that comes from. I guess ego, self. It's not meant to be easy. We just have a place to go for help. A friend that sticks closer than a brother, right?
Right.
He's
that.
here. Then ask him.
That's a great way to end.
Just let him listen.
Yeah.
He wants to hear you.
Well,
So
thank you
come
so
home.
much for your time. And like I said, it was great to get to hear your story, and I appreciate your time. And we just encourage everyone that's listening to this podcast and, heard this story and is encouraged, like, and come by the church and come meet the people that Kristin has said is so welcoming and available here. So thank you again, and just hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right.